Hey everyone, Kyle Walker here. If you love cars, fixing things, or just want to understand your vehicle better, you're in the right place. I share hands-on tips, smart driving advice, and straight-up car talk without the fluff. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and stick around till the end. You don't want to miss what's coming up. Let's get into
Motorists
it.
often create additional problems for themselves by violating the rules of car operation. No one prohibits smoking in the vehicle. This is a personal choice of each owner of the car. But careless handling of a cigarette entails such unpleasant consequences as burn marks on the upholstery. They often remain on the seats and on the cloth. For some people, these marks do not interfere at all and do not create any discomfort. Others are very worried and try to find any way to get rid of this cosmetic defect. Quite often it happens that when buying a used car in the cabin are found such unpleasant points, on which fell cigarette ash, resulting in a hole. There is nothing dangerous and terrible here. But from an aesthetic point of view, it will still be better to get rid of defects. At the same time, not everyone knows what to do if you burn the ceiling in the car. Motorists are interested in whether it is possible to get rid of it. And if yes, then how it is better to do it. There are several options, each of which is worthy of attention and consideration. Causes and consequences. Burns are faced by many motorists. Someone smokes himself, others allow passengers to smoke in their car. Although it is not always the cigarette that is to blame. In some situations, a small spark is enough, which can scorch the upholstery in the cabin. It is not difficult to understand the causes. It is careless handling of cigarettes and various sources of fire or high temperature. No one can exclude the possibility that when carrying out welding work, the device heated to maximum temperature accidentally touches the seat or the ceiling. The consequences are also quite predictable. The car owner will encounter not the most pleasant-looking burns, holes, or simply charred fibers. It does not always come to the formation of holes, and it is usually easier to repair such damage. Regardless of the causes, the car owner will have to painstakingly remove the burned interior of the car. How exactly to do this, and with the help of whom, everyone decides for himself. Mostly make a choice between self-repair and turning to specialists. In this case, depending on the size and number of defects, the solution may be partial repair or complete replacement of upholstery. Nuances of seat restoration. If the driver himself burned the upholstery of the seats in the car with a cigarette, he will certainly be interested in how to better fix the defect. Here you should start from how deep the seat is burned and what material the upholstery is made of. Specialists are sure that it is somewhat more difficult to restore the leather interior in the car if you accidentally burned it with a cigarette. Leather should be able to properly select and use. But there is no less work to be done with fabric upholstery. In order to spend minimum money on repairing car seat burns, you can start the repair procedure on your own. If you are not confident in your own abilities or are afraid of aggravating the condition of the interior, it is better to immediately seek help from qualified specialists. For repair with your own hands, you will need to prepare the necessary materials and tools. The success of the work largely depends on attention, consistency, and accuracy of actions. Before proceeding to the restoration procedure, be sure to assess the extent of damage and the general condition of all seats. These are old worn-out seats that have long been in need of renewal. Spending so much effort and time to fight with a single hole is pointless. Then it is easier to replace the entire upholstery, or continue to operate the car with worn-out seats, putting on some covers over them. If the interior is in excellent condition, but the whole picture spoils the trace of a small burn, then it is really worth to restore the upholstery. Material. First, you need to determine what material you are using. It is quite difficult to vaporize leather chairs with a cigarette. Often only a dark mark is left, but no hole is formed. The darkening is usually easily removed by dry cleaning or washing with good products. Fabric and velour interiors burn through more easily. It is with them associated with most of the work in which car owners are trying to get rid of the consequences of sloppy smoking in the cabin. Preparation of the upholstery. The essence of preparation is to remove all contaminants. You can clean the interior yourself or send the car to a car wash. Sam's special means, and with the help of professional equipment, will quickly restore the natural color of the seats. So you will know exactly how to pick up the material by color. Otherwise, instead of a burn mark, you will get a contrasting insert, which is significantly different against the background of the rest of the upholstery. This should not be allowed either. The size and condition of the hole. It is not difficult to determine it, using improvised measuring tools. This is necessary to understand exactly how much material you will need for repair and restoration work. It is also interesting that very small holes are more difficult to work with, as the work is more delicate. Trimming. To do everything properly and correctly, you need to get rid of the charred edges of the burned hole. Trimming can be done with scissors or a box cutter. Use the sharpest possible tools to cut the minimum amount of padding and not to shag the edges. Otherwise, you will only increase the diameter of the hole, making your task more difficult. Cut the excess so that from the resulting crack the material does not begin to tear further. If you make a mistake here, after the restoration is completed, a further process of destruction of the interior can begin. New cracks will develop from the patch. In the end, you will still have to change the upholstery completely. Temporary measure. This step can be skipped if you are ready to immediately proceed to restoration. But sometimes the motorist has urgent cases in which the car is needed, and the repair has to be postponed for a few days. So that the hole from the burn did not diverge, take a needle with a thread and carefully sew the defect. This is relevant for fabric salons. Do not tighten the thread too much, otherwise, when landing in place with a patch, the fabric will simply crack due to the strong tension of the threads. As a result, a small hole will turn into a huge hole. Fibers. In order not to look for a material of exactly the same color, which is sometimes almost impossible to do, there is an option with the use of fibers. They are obtained by passing a razor or blade over the fabric upholstery of the interior in those areas where minor defects will not be noticeable. You do not need to cut the fabric. It is enough to gather small threads to repeat the structure of the upholstery. Restoration. If you sewed the hole, remove the threads. Next, take any appropriately sized fabric. Not necessarily in the color of the salon, because here you can involve previously collected fibers. Take a special glue, and with its help from the inside of the hole glue a piece of fabric of suitable size. Do it carefully. In no case, do not fill the area with a large amount of glue, otherwise you will only spoil everything. On top of the glued fabric, which does not match the color of the interior, glue the previously collected fibers. Such a procedure is better to repeat several times, using more fibers and a small amount of glue. If you manage to find a material similar in color and structure to the interior upholstery, everything is easier here. It will be enough to glue a section from the inside of the hole. Read also, checking and replacing the camshaft position sensor weight for the upholstery to dry properly. For the first 24 hours, it is better not to sit on the restoration site, but to allow the material to properly fix itself in the new place. If you do everything correctly and use a suitable adhesive, there will be no marks on the seats, and the restored upholstery will blend in color and structure with the rest of the interior upholstery. Carefulness plays a major role here. The more delicately you perform each step, the higher the chances of success. Just do not rush, but do everything consistently. Work with the salon, where a certain pattern or multi-component color is used, is noticeably more difficult. Here you have to cut the hole as evenly as possible and create a perfectly even patch under it. This way, you won't leave any marks after the repair. There are other methods of restoration, based on the use of professional glue or special solutions, different paints, and expensive materials. But it is almost impossible to cope with such a task on your own. If you have an expensive car with high-quality upholstery, then it will be better and right to immediately contact a workshop. Working with leather in case of burns on leather chairs, you will have to make the work a little more complicated and expand the range of materials used. You'll need color-matched paint, tweezers, reinforcing mesh, a Teflon pad, cooling pads, small spatula, sandpaper, airbrush, etc. To do the job correctly, act in a certain sequence. This will allow you to get rid of the damage qualitatively and forget about it forever. Degrease the surface, remove all dirt around the damage. Treat and the skin around the defects, so that the paint lay down as qualitatively and evenly as possible. Remove burned areas around the perimeter of the damage. In this way, the restoration will be neat and even. If there are any rough defects, they can be rubbed out with fine sandpaper. Work carefully so as not to damage the whole skin. A reinforcing mesh is inserted into the hole. Here you will need a material that resembles liquid leather in its structure. Due to the mesh, the composition will not penetrate under the skin, but will not spill out. The powder is applied to the mesh and gradually heated. Due to the effective temperature, the mixture acquires a glue-like structure. Before heating, make sure that the temperature is correct and suitable. Usually irons are used here. Now the Teflon pad is laid. The iron should be run over it several times. This will allow the material to bond. A cooling bag is placed on top. It is needed to smooth the surface and reduce the temperature. The pad is removed and the mold is taken out. It is poured with a special agent called Beigel. Again, the temperature treatment is carried out with a Teflon pad and an iron. Again, a cooling bag to bring down the temperature. By applique, make a blank for subsequent painting. This will allow you to apply the airbrush paint exactly along the contours of the hole. It remains to find a suitable color paint and apply it to the prepared surface. The work is difficult and delicate. You will need to prepare a wide list of materials and tools in advance. Sometimes it is much easier to immediately seek the help of specialists. They have everything necessary for restoration. Restoration of a burn on the ceiling. It also happens that the driver accidentally burned the ceiling of the car with a cigarette. And then there is a natural question about how to correct your own mistake. And it should be corrected taking into account what specific material is used for the upholstery of the ceiling. If it is fabric, then you can use the same tips that are designed to restore the seats. Basically, the ceiling is made of, depending on the specific material, experts give special recommendations for getting rid of burn marks. Leather and leatherette leather and artificial leather substitute are quite often used as the main material for upholstering the ceiling. In cars of different price categories, working with leather and leatherette somewhat resembles the restoration of velour. But here you will need special liquid components, because these materials need to soften at lower temperatures than velour fabric. Repairing the upholstery of the ceiling, be sure to apply special agents several times. It is not necessary to pour everything in one approach. Leather and leatherette are better glued rather than stitched with a needle and thread. Much depends on the structure of the ceiling itself and the car manufacturer's design idea. Some people divide the upholstery into separate decorative sections. Then when a burn occurs, you can cut out the whole section and in its place sew a new component, pre-cut and cut exactly to size. Read also how to care for the lenses of car headlights when working with leather ceilings and upholstery from artificial substitute. For natural leather, it is most difficult to get rid of the borders of the patch. Here it is important to cut the edges of the cigarette hole extremely carefully and fit a new patch under it. Plus, it is important to find a material that exactly repeats the color and texture of the entire ceiling lining. If you cannot find a similar leather or leatherette, sometimes it is allowed to use a similar material with further tinting in color. But even here it is extremely difficult to accurately select the palette. But practice clearly shows that on leather and leatherette rarely from cigarettes are formed full-fledged holes. Often these are areas of dark color, meaning that they were affected by high temperature. Special gels and quality dry cleaning can help. Some cars are equipped with plastic upholstery on the ceiling. This makes it somewhat difficult for the motorist to restore the surface after a cigarette burn. The plastic should be selected with regard to color and texture. Special plasticizer gels are available on the market, which differ in the level of granularity. They can be used to quickly restore the damaged surface. But cutting out a piece of plastic and inserting a new one in its place is not always considered the best option. Although it should be considered if the burn was formed in a poorly visible place, somewhere in the corner. Just cut out the plastic will be difficult, as well as accurately fit the patch. But some people successfully cope with the task at hand. If the damage is serious enough, then it makes sense to dismantle the ceiling trim and try to restore the defect in the same way as they do when the bumper is damaged. For this purpose, the fusion method is used, due to which cracks and chips are pulled together to form a solid surface. This is extremely delicate work, for which not everyone is ready to take on their own hands. Fabric ceilings are no less popular than leather ceilings, and those made of leatherette. One of the most popular types of fabrics used in cars is velour. Taking into account the peculiarities of restoration of burns on such a surface, you can try similar methods to solve the problem. With the ceiling made of leatherette and leather, In total, there are 3 options for getting out of the situation. Restore with your own hands. First, the nature of the damage and its dimensions are studied. Next, a sharp tool is used to cut out the burned areas, leaving only the whole fabric. From an inconspicuous area, a piece of velour is cut out, glue is applied to the prepared hole, and a patch is inserted. Pressing it tightly, you can get a good result. Restoration with the help of a rimcomplect. There are special rimcomplective, from which a piece of velour or only the necessary amount of lint is taken. They fill the damaged area with them, without touching the rest of the sealing lining. But the only problem is that not always and not for any car you can find a repair kit. Professional restoration. In general, this method of restoration is the simplest, but it will require financial investment for the work. Do not hurry to refuse the services of masters, because they are not so expensive. But the restoration is carried out quickly, qualitatively, and with a guarantee. Much depends on whether the specialist will be able to pick up the material by color, structure, and texture. This is not always possible, especially when working with old cars, the upholstery for which is simply not available on the market. It cannot be said that sealing restoration is very different from working with car seats, except for the fact that plastic is not used to cover the seats, but when upholstering the ceiling, this material is used quite often. Be careful, attentive, and consistent in your actions. This is a guarantee of success. Useful tips. There are a few general recommendations that, despite their simplicity, are really useful and important. Do not smoke. Very banal, but absolutely correct advice. It is necessary to wean yourself from a pernicious habit. Will not argue on the subject of the harm of smoking for health. At least try not to smoke in the car. This will protect you from possible damage to the interior. After all, when no one lights cigarettes in the cabin, there can also be no problems with the formation of burns. Do not flick ash out the window while driving. Some drivers put their hand on the window and practically flick the cigarette out of the rearview mirror. But if you do this, there's a good chance that the ash will fly back into the cabin. This happens through an open driver's window or through the rear passenger window. There are 2 options here. Either you shake off as far away from the window as possible, or you use an ashtray. On some cars it is provided by design, or you can build it with your own hands. Remember that you are driving. The advice is a little strange, but really useful. Many people who are behind the wheel of a car have a habit of gesticulating actively when talking. This happens when talking to passengers or during phone conversations. As a result, the hand with a cigarette between the fingers flies in different directions, thereby spreading hot ash all over the cabin. As a result, the lining on doors, ceiling, seats, etc. burns through. The automobile makes increased demands not only in terms of safety of movement. It is also necessary to know how to behave properly inside the vehicle. Try to minimize the number of cigarettes you smoke when you are driving. To do this, you can stop, get out of the car, and have a quiet smoke. In general, it is better to fight this habit with cardinal methods. That is, completely give up tobacco smoking. It is hard, but extremely useful for your health. And, as it turns out, for the safety of the upholstery of the interior of your car. In conclusion, restoring car upholstery after a burn is indeed possible, but it requires careful assessment and the right approach. Depending on the extent of the damage, options range from simple cleaning and patching to complete reupholstering. Always start by evaluating the severity of the burn and consider consulting a professional if needed. With the right tools and techniques, you can breathe new life into your car's interior, ensuring it remains comfortable and visually appealing. Remember, taking prompt action can significantly improve the chances of a successful restoration. Thank you for watching, and we hope you found this information helpful for your car care journey.